I'm gonna feel like a heretic for this. And I know I already got enough people upset with the Sephiroth redemption arc. And we're breaking through the fourth wall today, talking about how Aerith might not be the last ancient. Let's get into the video. Now, if you love Final Fantasy VII just as much as me, I break down here on this channel a whole bunch of lore, look at the Ultimanias, break through some of the small stories, some of the big stories to tell you and help you how to properly understand the story. Now, some of these ideas might seem fringe, but I think it's something that you should at least give some time to think about because that's what this channel is all about, deep thought. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And as I say at the end of all my videos, if you disagree with anything that I'm saying, let's argue about it in the comments. Okay, you made it this far. Super happy about that. What we're going to be discussing today is Ever Crisis First Soldier and how it talked about Da-Chao, IGARA, Robio, and what kind of happened in the order of sequence there. And I did make a breakdown kind of stream of the 4 parts of Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, but I'm going to dive into a little bit more detail today because I wanted to talk about Da-Chao. And if you know Yuffie, if you know Wutai, Da-Chao is seen as like their greatest person who created the land, greatest warrior. And a lot of people want to live up to the expectation that he brought in saving their people into Wutai. In Ever Crisis, we learned something very specific that I think needs to be dived into a little bit deeper. So without further ado, I'm going to throw the headphones on. We're going to jump into some of the scenes that I want to talk about specifically so you have an idea of where my mind's at. And after that, we're going to kind of break it down into the ideas of what exactly does that mean. Let's go. Spoiler warning. This is a spoiler warning. This is a spoiler warning. Hello there. This is a spoiler warning. Turn off now or forever hold your peace. Before all this, Alyssa is JENOVA controlled. She told us before that she was part of the PO Soldier program. She'll know that she has JENOVA cells, which means that she's easily able to be manipulated by JENOVA. So she's about to give us a whole history lesson on JENOVA 2,000 years ago. And you have to start fomenting this idea of how is JENOVA in Wutai? How is JENOVA able to influence people in Wutai? Is it JENOVA? Is it somebody else that came when the planet crashed, the meteor cracked into 2 and JENOVA had a previous sidekick and now she's looking to get a second sidekick in Sephiroth? You have to start thinking a little bit like that to kind of understand where we're going here, because from our understanding of the story, JENOVA crashed, the children of men and the Cetra went to fight her, defeat her, freeze her up at the Northern Crater. There was never any JENOVA expansion into Wutai that we know before this lore was introduced to us. So it's something that we have to keep super in the back of our minds as to why are they telling this? Where are they going with this story? In the background right here, you can see the purple kind of lava pool, which means maybe JENOVA, when she landed, crashed, her life stream helped to try to fix the Northern Crater. And maybe at that point in time already, she was able to manipulate, influence the life stream, which is how, I won't get into that, but which is how some people, specifically Sephiroth's mom, might be able to have premonitions of the future. And Dr. Lucrezia Crescent is the first person to have premonitions of the future, but that video is coming in a while. Okay, we know there was evidence of a very powerful magic that was once used in this area. Around 2,000 years ago, the ancients arrived to tame the land. They named this place IGARA and expanded their territory southward. So we're in Wutai, or Wutai doesn't exist yet. I guess spoiler reveal. We're in the Western continent and we're northwest. And we're making our way from IGARA and expanding the territory southward. So down, okay? So think IGARA, southward, Robio is where the establishment is gonna be. So 2,000 years ago, what she just told us, before a century had passed, IGARA was transformed from a barren wasteland into a fertile grassland. Okay. So we know who is known that we know about that go to different areas and are nomadic people. The ancients. Around 2,000 years ago, the ancients arrived to tame the land. 2,000 years ago, the ancients arrived to tame the land. It took them about 100 years to tame that land. So IGARA, wasteland, 2,000 years ago, 100 years into the future, they tamed IGARA and made it a fertile land. Just like how we see in the VR, how the Cetra ancients are nomadic people. They go and they mess with the materia and create out of thin air and all that stuff. This kind of gives you an idea of them in action directly. Then, without warning, a fearsome beast invaded the region. And I know what kind of you're thinking, maybe what I was thinking when I first had my first playthrough of this. It's that we think that the fearsome beast is Masamune, but there's a distinction between those two people, Masamune and whoever this beast is that came to invade the region. The fiend existed only to slaughter. Angeal asks, obviously Angeal, the smart genius guy, says, well, what was this beast's name? And what does Alyssa answer? The stories don't give it a name. The people of IGARA didn't want it to be remembered. Does this sound similar to somebody else who didn't have a name and a scientist had to give that special demon phenomenon a specific name? Yes. The answer is JENOVA. Okay? Seeing the parallels? The only thing is that the Wutaians were smart. I keep saying Wutaians because I know what's happening next, but the people of IGARA did not give this beast a name. They kept it nameless. Kind of like Freddy Krueger. The more you remember him, he gets stronger. Like it. You get strong, you know him. Pennywise, he gets stronger. The more people know about him, the more people read, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. He gets stronger and stronger and gets more power, gets out of the dream world and comes into the real world. I guess it's symbolic to this also. Eventually, a group of warriors arose to kill the beasts. 5 sages of Wutai. They pursued it south. So IGARA was here, it expanded southward, and they followed the beast south and incinerated it with scorching magic, okay? The monster was dead. So we know this version of the monster died at least in its physical form. So it can no longer harm anybody because its physical form is now defeated, which is different than what happened with the Children of Men and the Ancients at the Northern Crater, where they essentially froze JENOVA, put her into a deep slumber, and didn't really defeat JENOVA's being. So the main problem that happened after they used that scorching magic, so the 5 sages used the scorching magic, they weren't able to control it. So it kept spreading across the land. So remember, they went from IGARA, they chased it southward, and then after they're running back north. So they're running back north to warn all the people and say, you got to get out of here. There's a huge incendiary, whatever the word is. There's a huge amount of fire coming north. We need to get the heck out of here. One by one, those sages and the people died. They slowly died off and died off and died off. But one of them did make it. And we know from the start of this that the ancients came to settle the land, and the ancients came and went south to fight this beast. So it confirms to us that Da-Chao and the people who came to settle the land were ancients, and 100 years after, those same ancients repopulated, made the land fertile. So now it's pretty much ancients, nomadic ancients moving southward, then moving back northward. Da-Chao, the final warrior who survived, was able to help his people flee further north. But although they were saved, the fire burned for 3 more years, engulfing their homes, the land surrounding it. So the fire, the inferno that I forget one of the sages used, burned everything for 3 entire years. Rebuilding was deemed impossible, and the villagers of IGARA moved north to create a new settlement. What was that new settlement called? You guessed it. That's how Wutai began. So the nomadic people fled to the north, created Wutai, and now they settled Wutai as the indigenous population there. I've heard that those cells were grown for something they scrapped off a meteorite. You know anything about that? Referencing JENOVA at the Northern Crater, the meteor that crashed 2,000 years ago. What's Alyssa going to talk about? Obviously, she's going to deny it because we can't have people learning the truth about JENOVA, because then they'll realize that they're infected and they're not enhanced. She's saying that's misinformation, but really it's accurate information, which is what those kind of people always do. That's misinformation when it's really the truth. Now, here's where things get interesting, because we find out what happened after Wutai was created. And if you remember earlier on in the video, I talked about there was a beast and there was a fiend, and Masamune could be confused with this fiend. So let's find out the chronological order of when those 2 beings come into play and if they are the same. So now we find out some history about Robio. So remember, IGARA, Robio. So the next chapter takes place 500 years long after the 5 warriors bested that beast. So they went, settled over 100 years, 2,000 years ago plus 100, went back, came, fought the beast, went back, created Wutai. 500 years after that 2,000 year decline. So we're plus 600 years by now. So clearly 500 years after the beast was, we know, defeated, because she told us there's something else that's going on in Robio. What is that? What we also find out, we know now, this confirms to us that the same people that were ancients initially that came nomadic, came to settle the land, and then after had to escape, ancients in the area, not saying they're the same from Wutai, but it says ancients came down and settled the area long after the fire was done engulfing this kind of forbidden zone. They had the knowledge of the ancients to make a desolate land revived. It flourished once again. The settlers' camp became a village, and that's the Robio you see here today. So that kind of sums up the main argument that I was making, that we know that Da-Chao was an ancient because it tells us that the ancients settled the land and then after moved further north to do IGARA, then after further north to do the Robio and burned the whole village and after escaped. And we also know that the two beings were different. So if we know there was a group of ancients that were heavily diminished after the fire, is there a possibility that Da-Chao had some children, that some of the sages, I know there were some young ones, some old ones, they had children? Did those ancients repopulate that area? And is all of Wutai really made of ancients? That's something we need to start thinking about, because there could be a bloodline that is an ancient descendant. And would Hojo ever know about this bloodline? No, he wouldn't know about this bloodline, because anytime Shinra has tried to go to Wutai, they've been kicked out as soon as possible during a war. And maybe that's really the bigger reason why the war is happening between Wutai, Midgar, and Shinra. Maybe it's not simply about the Mako, the reactors. They don't want to assimilate to us. Maybe it's a deeper meaning, and that's something that I wanted to talk about today. If you liked the video, or if you disagree with the video, let's hear about it in the comments. Is the Chao an ancient? We already answered that question. But did the ancients continue to populate Wutai? And is there a bloodline of ancients still alive today in Wutai? That's all we got today, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. Hey, hey.